Hello, everybody. Charles from GMAT Ninja here. Welcome to our episode on GMAT Superscoring. Just came into existence about 2 days ago. Here for this conversation, one of my favorite people, Stacey Koprince, Director of Content and Curriculum at Manhattan Prep. Not her first rodeo. She knows some stuff. So we're going to talk about what superscoring is to start with, and then we'll get into, what should you do about this? Who benefits from this? Should you change your strategy? Take the test over and over a bunch of times? Spoiler alert, probably not. So let me start with a not very interesting part for anybody who is not familiar with superscoring. In brief, here's what it is. So if you take the test multiple times, and let's say that you do not get your best section scores all on the same day. So in this example, somebody just kind of crapped the bed on Quant on their first attempt at the test, did great on verbal and data insights, retakes, crushes Quant, but kind of slips back a little bit on verbal and data insights. What you would have seen in the score reports, the single attempt scores, 605, 625. But now there's a thing called a Superscore. So it takes the highest section scores, 83, 83, 83, 665 composite in this example. So, all right. So Stacey, oops, that is not, we lost you, Stacey. There you go. Sorry,
I didn't go anywhere.
Like, where'd you go? So let's start with this. So again, that example obviously is a fake one. It's stylized. But I guess your initial impressions, like kind of in your world, people you've been talking to over the last 2 or 3 days, who benefits from this? So who's looking at this and either is thinking or should be thinking, cool, this is awesome.
So I've already talked to one student who's was actually fairly similar to the numbers that you just put there. Their top single sitting score is a 645, but their super score is a 685. They're studying for their retake right now, and the 685 was their goal. And so they're like, wait, do I even need to take it again? What's going on? So that student's pretty happy so far with what's going on. Now, of course, the one wild card there is, are the schools that they're planning to apply to planning to use the Superscore? So that's the homework that they now need to do, is to go find out if their goal schools or their target schools are planning to use the Superscore. Then they just got some really good news that they're done and they don't need to take the GMAT again.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, if we toss this back up for a quick second here, I mean, this is, I think this is not uncommon. Obviously, I made up these numbers, but the fundamental experience of, here's somebody who, let's say, prepared really hard for that first exam and just kind of had a brain fart or whatever on one section. I feel really bad for these people who had their best day on 2 sections, it slips back just a little bit on the next attempt. This happens. And I think that this is the single biggest rationale for the new policy is, what about those folks? Like how, number one, I think there are people who go, I don't want to take it a third time. Like I've done a really good job on all 3 sections. This is enough. Like why retake a third time just to try to put it together? And second, I think the hope is that this reduces anxiety a little bit. Like if you're sitting there thinking like, I've got to nail all 3 sections.
Every time, yeah.
Every single time, as opposed to, well, okay, if I have a little letdown on verbal and data insights, as long as I crush Quant, it's going to be okay. And I'm not saying mail it in on the other 2 sections. I don't think anybody would say that. I think that would look terrible. Yeah. If that was 83, 60, 60, that would be bad. Don't do that.
And the schools would notice that. So obviously you wouldn't want that. Also, I will just say, you might, like, with that student, that example that you just put up, yes, that student is going to be focused on improving their quant score, but you might pick up another couple of points in one of the other 2 sections or both of the other 2 sections. So if you're paying $300 to go in there every single time and take it, you should be going all out on every section. What might just change, I think, is in a second take or so on, it might change the order in which you decide to do the sections. Your strategy for that might change a little bit based on whatever it is you're trying to maximize when you get in there next time.
So say a little more about kind of what you have in mind. So why would section order make a difference there?
This varies from student to student in terms of what section order is the best. So I'll use myself as an example. Generally speaking, I'm freshest in my first section, and I'm the kind of test taker who, like, I can really hit the ground running. I don't need some time to get up to speed. I can just get in there and do it in my first section. But that also means I'm starting to lose it a little bit by the time I get to the end of the test. So for me, if there's a section going in that I'm like, I really need to maximize or have full brain energy, that section's going first. But I have students who, and colleagues too, who the first section is not really where they're firing on all cylinders. They're using that section actually to also warm up a little bit. And so they'll tend to prefer for their first section something that they're feeling more comfortable with. And then they're going to put as their second section, that section where they really want to try to crush it. So they get that, build up that momentum in the first section and then go into the second section, riding that wave.
Makes sense. Stacey, we should probably get into some logistics. Again, if you're watching this live, fire some questions in. You guys have been pretty quiet so far, but we're keeping an eye on the comments. We will answer anything you guys want us to answer. Logistics. So had a lot of questions already, on GMAT Club, Reddit, elsewhere about, okay, what are schools really seeing here? So an important bit of logistics. So we'll pull this example back up for a second. So let's say that you still have to choose to send at least one single attempt score.
Mhm.
So if you were this test taker, you might say, okay, I'm gonna send the June 1st exam only. Let's just pretend that would be the case. By the way, bad idea because the July 19th one had an improvement. But let's say that you choose the June 1st one for some reason. Then what the school will see is the June 1st result, and they'll see the Superscore. Alongside that Superscore, they will see exactly when you got your highest section score. So they'll see that you took the exam on July 19th, and that's when you got your 83 on Quant. And they'll see that on June 1st, you got your 83 on Verbal and Data Insights. So a couple of thoughts here.
But they won't see. Oh, sorry, you're going to say this? They won't see.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, so they want on the July 19th test, they won't see your 80 on Verbal and your 80 on Data Insights.
Right. If that's the choice you make to just send the June 1st score, they will see only the June 1st and the Superscore.
Right.
With dates on the Superscore. Now, the advice that typically I've given to candidates is, look, schools like to see perseverance. They don't mind seeing multiple attempts. It is not a strike against you. I've never heard of a school saying, well, you've taken the test 3 times and this other guy over here took it only once and got the same score. That guy's smarter. That's not what they're thinking. Yeah. They want to see you on your best day. They appreciate somebody who's willing to put in the work and effort to keep going in there. So there was never a problem with showing multiple attempts. That was never a thing to hide or be ashamed of. The advice always would have been, so yeah, report both of these. They showed improvement, right? Like unambiguously, report them both. I would give that same advice, and they always would have seen those section scores. The only difference is GMAC is now doing the math and giving the schools that 665 number.
Yeah, and actually, when you and I were talking to GMAC on Monday, when they were letting us know this information, they said something that surprised me. So I had always known that some schools ask on their applications for people to tell all their GMAT scores, but I wasn't sure exactly what the schools were doing with that information. And GMAC, of course, works very closely with the business schools, and said that a number of business schools actually have already been calculating super scores on their own, just independently. So they were already doing this, some of them, not all of them. We just didn't know about it. So first of all, I'm glad to know about it. That's useful information to have, because that definitely changes how many times I might choose to take it, or my strategy, that sort of thing. And from the school's perspective, like I would say half of why GMAC did this was because some schools literally just wanted it. The other half of it, of course, is that this does make the test more user-friendly, although it does, as someone's pointing out in the comments right now, it also potentially increases the equity issues around the test, because not everybody can afford to take the test multiple times. So there's that issue as well. You could already take the test multiple times before, obviously. For me, once I found out that some schools were already calculating a super score and we just didn't know about it, if that's happening already anyway, then it might as well, I'd rather know. So it might as well just be made a formal thing that everybody knows. And now everybody can make the decisions with full information.
Yeah. And what I thought was going on prior to that conversation on Monday was implicit superscoring, right? Because I'm very, very aware, and we see this behavior from admissions all the time, where they'll say, wow, we've got a candidate whose best single attempt score is lower than we would want, but we can see those stronger section scores. Like tons of candidates over the years, where admissions people have said that to them. Like, yeah, I know your GMAT's low, but we can see that you're fine. Your skills are good. We can see that quant skill. We can see the verbal skill, see the data skill. We are getting a lot of questions about this. We might as well talk about it more. I don't want to hide from this question. I don't think GMAC does either. I mean, I think they've been pretty open, certainly with us, about being aware of this issue. Does this push you to do multiple attempts? Similar question, maybe phrased a little more strong. And thank you guys for the comments. Incentivizes, makes sense as a business strategy. Hope schools don't consider as a valid data point. Honestly, speaking personally here, I mean, this is my discomfort as well, right? Hey, I can't afford multiple retakes. And if I want to spin this in a positive way, which is not necessarily my job, but if we want to be positive about it, I think this inequity already existed and was a thing that has always really bothered me, frankly, because, for this individual who, can't afford multiple retakes, no pressure, my friend, on your one retake that you can afford. It's terrible. Because again, that implicit super scoring, not necessarily adding it up. And again, some schools apparently have been doing it explicitly recently. But that idea that, hey, somebody can go take it 4 times and show their best section scores and that moves the needle, or better still, you just have good days and bad days. It's always been an inequity. Does this do a lot to make that inequity worse? My personal first instinct is yes. I'm not sure that that's right, just because it's all already existed. And keep in mind, part of what this does is schools are going to see a little bit more now, because if you super score, they're going to see that you got it off of multiple attempts. Some schools have been asking for a number of years, tell us about all of your attempts.
Mhm.
I think more schools are going to start doing that, conjecture on my part, but I think more schools are going to start asking, how many times did you take it? Ask explicitly, please send us all of your scores. So the hope here, for those of you who are looking at this and going, wait a minute, I can only take it once, is there might actually be a little bit more information going to schools. I think schools might demand it. Take that super score. We're getting questions about, well, wait a minute. Is a super score at 665 as strong as a single sitting 665? I think the best we can do is kind of shrug at that and sort of speculate that schools will recognize that those two things are different. How much weight will they put on it? I don't know. But what I hope happens is that schools do ask for all of your scores. So those of you who can only go in once, it's going to be very clear to them, number one, that you only went in once, somebody else had 6 attempts. And number
Actually,
two,
they'll know already.
communicate that to them.
They'll know already. Sorry, say your second point.
Yeah.
I'll address the
No, just that, when in doubt, tell them in your optional essay. It's part of
so you actually don't need to, because the score report itself will indicate that you've only taken it once by not showing a super score. So
not necessarily, because if you've taken it, let's say 8 times, and you had your best sitting on, let's say, the 6th attempt, you won't have a super score. You'll just have one attempt that was your best attempt. Now, that inequity has always existed, right? That looks like a single attempt. I suspect that schools, certainly more elite ones or more selective ones, I think this will, again, it could be totally wrong. We might be laughing at this in 3 months or 3 years. I think I hope it inspires them to ask for a little bit more data so that they can kind of take it with an extra grain of salt to say, wait a minute, if I'm inclined to, I don't know, let's say reject this person over here as a 635 and accept this similar candidate over here with a 665, that's a super score 665, that's a single attempt 635. I'm hoping that they're asking for more data so that they take that with a grain of salt and go, wait a minute, what was the 665's best single attempt? Maybe we shouldn't see these as different.
And they will see the 665's best single attempt, presumably, because the person, sorry, I just shouldn't say presumably. The score report will include at least one single test sitting, the official score report, because you have to choose a single test in order to send the score report. So we'll include at least one. When I say presumably you'll choose your best one. So presumably you won't do what Charles did when he was showing his example and choose the 605. Presumably he'll choose the 625. So the schools will presumably already be saying your best single test sitting, plus if you have it, a super score. Most of the time, if someone does take the test, 8 times or whatever, usually it's the case that their single best sitting is not usually they will have a super score. It's rare in my experience, although Charles, please tell me if you found differently, but it's rare in my experience once somebody gets to taking the test 3 or 4 times, it's usually the case that there are at least 2 different tests where they're peaking in different sections. So although, yes, I didn't think about that before, it's the case that you could not have a super score, but technically have taken the test multiple times. My guess is that most of the time that's not the case, and the schools are just going to assume that if someone doesn't have a super score, that means it was a single test sitting.
And I think you're right. I think for most people, and this is part of where I think you could argue that this won't have as big of an impact as it might feel. I don't think there are that many people whose super score would be more than, a handful of points higher than their best single score. I think that's true. There are outliers, and I think that this policy, and thank you for this comment, Ashish, and again, as always, apologies for mispronunciations. Yeah, I mean, if this helps you to go in stress-free and know I don't have to be perfect on all 3 sections, and if I have a little hiccup on whatever, on Quant, on data insights, whatever it might be, keep going, breathe. I can retake if one section went badly. I think that's good. And I think for those people who kind of are outliers, who, like the example we showed, just completely crap the bed on one section on one day, this is great for them. And I think in a way that's arguably fair, again, other than the inequity that's always existed, that I don't think it's great that some people can afford multiple attempts and some people can't. But I think for most people, that bump from superscoring is going to be pretty small. And as we get questions about strategy and people asking, well, wait a minute, you know, so here's one, does this change how many times you take the test? And I think that's a lot of people's instinct. Well, I'm just going to take the test a whole bunch of times. But I think the gains from that, number one, are really small. Typically. And again, we know that GMAC has calculated data on this. Stacey, I don't think you've seen it either yet. At some point, I'm sure they will share it with us to give us a sense of how common this really is or how impactful this is. But I think the strategy of, without any real improvement, you just go in and retake hoping for variance. Oh, I got 2 more points on this section on this day. It's just a bad use of your time and money. Yeah. When you think about all the things that go into admissions, like doing that instead of focusing on something else that's,
it's like throwing darts at a dartboard. Unless you're really, really good at darts, it's just not a good strategy. Yeah, fully agree. I've been talking to my fellow teachers within my company, as you can imagine. We've been talking a lot about this in the last 48 hours since this was announced. And we pretty much come to the consensus that a couple of things. So first of all, if you haven't taken the test at all yet, and you're gearing up for your first take, this changes nothing. You are still doing everything you can. Like in a perfect world, you take the test once, you're done with it. You pay for it once, you have the stress once, and you're done, and you never have to worry about it again. Yep. So it changes absolutely nothing for your first take. For a second or later take, we went through the whole, like, should you just be like, okay, now I got my best verbal score on the first test. Now I'm going to just focus on Quant, and I'm going to totally blow off the other 2 on the second test. Again, first of all, you're paying $275, $300 US every time you go take this test. It is a stressful experience. My goal is still, like, if I'm going to take it a second time, I still want that to be my last time. Like every time I take it, I want it to be my last time. So I'm still doing my best in every test that's coming up. And who knows, I might even get a little bit better on whatever I got my top score on last time. I might even still pick up a couple more points. I think the only thing it's going to change is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, or could potentially change, which is the section order that I choose. It'll change that. Sorry. And the other thing it will change is the anxiety issue that somebody brought up a couple of minutes ago, where if I know I've already locked in, an 86 verbal on my last test, I don't need to. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I don't, if I know I've already locked in an 86 verbal on my last test, I'm still going to try to get that 86 verbal again next time, because maybe I can get an 87 this time, but it's okay if I don't. It's okay if I end up dropping a couple points on that, because I have already locked it in. So that's just going to free up my nerves a little bit to pay more attention to whatever it is I'm trying to, bump up this time.
Yep. Yeah. And this is for you, Ashish. I mean, this is exactly what the policy is for, is that, GMAC, I've got to give them credit. Creators of GMAT, they're very aware of test anxiety. Mm-hmm. They're very aware that it's a high stakes test. Everyone takes this really, really seriously. Most people take it really seriously. Maybe some of you kind of blow it off. You're probably not watching this video if that's the case. They know, and that's part of what brought this policy into being, is that hope. And again, the equity issues are real. I mean, that's a thing. There's a lot that we don't necessarily know about how schools are going to think about this. And my conjecture is that, especially for more selective schools, they're going to ask for more data. I think they're going to take it with a grain of salt. They're going to make sure that they understand whether something is a super score that maybe was a little weird. Maybe there was some gaming of the system because you took the test 10 times. And remember, think about what a business degree is, right? A lot, or what being successful in business is. A lot of it is about how you allocate your time and resources. And I don't know that schools would explicitly judge if you took the test 10 times over the course of 2 years. But if nothing's really improving, they might go, why are you spending your time in this way? There's so many other things you could do to improve your life, your career, your applications. Having better relations with people around you. Like, why are you spending all this time and resources on this test? So I think people who do try to game it, I don't think it's going to look good. And certainly if somebody tries to bomb, focus on just one section and bomb the others, that's going to look terrible. It's going to look absolutely terrible.
It's going to look terrible. And I'll also mention, So I don't know whether this will come into play with GMAC, but a couple years ago, one of our instructors went to take the GRE, and he was basically trying to score qualify because we require 99th percentile scores, and so he was already teaching GMAT for us, and now he wanted to teach GRE, so he had to go take the test and score, get the score to be able to teach for us. So we don't care about the essay, because who cares about the essay? So he was just focused on the multiple choice portion of the test, so he just skipped the essay. And ETS canceled his GRE score because he didn't answer the essay. He didn't type the essay. And he was like, wait, what? So yeah, I wouldn't want to mess with it and literally just completely blow off the other sections if I knew that I only needed to try to get Quant to go up this time. I wouldn't want to do that just for that reason, like just in case that popped something with the test security and they were like, no, we're not going to allow this test. But again, I'm going to go back to my own best interest. I've already gotten, my 85 or whatever in verbal. I might get another point next time. Why would I not go for it?
Okay, going to go rapid fire through a couple small questions. Pooja, always great to see you. How are they going to incorporate into their admissions process? This is the part that's the Wild West. We don't know yet. GMAC will work with the schools to issue guidance. So questions like, what score goes into the rankings? What score goes into the brochure? Is the school's median? Those things have not been determined yet, at least not to the best of our knowledge. They had not been as of 48 hours ago. How exactly schools will interpret these, who knows? Again, my conjecture is they're going to start asking more schools, some already do, will start asking for all of your attempts so that they know to take it with a proper grain of salt, Superscore versus single attempt. But I think that's pretty much all we know at this point. And I think schools tend to be a little conservative in the sense that they don't rapidly change their interpretations of things. It is not in their interest to do that. So I wouldn't expect any radical changes right now. And keep in mind, it's the same data they've always seen if you reported all of your best section scores. GMAC's just doing the math. So I would not expect rapid radical changes here. How it's going to evolve over 3 to 5 years, anyone's guess.
I would guess, though, that the schools that had already been essentially doing their own Superscore, like maybe now they'll just say, yep, this is what we're going to do. And this is what we're going to consider, because they were already doing it. But as always, every school can choose whatever they want. Like every school has their own admissions policies and how heavily they weight and what they do with all of the data points that you're giving to them on your application. So every school is going to have their own thing. And part of what we'll all need to do is to talk to our goal schools and ask them how they view this test, and what they're going to do.
They like talking to you. They're not just gatekeepers. They're matchmakers. So
For sure.
When in doubt, talk to them, ask questions. Okay. So small little question here. Stacey, please correct me if I'm wrong. No, you don't need to, you don't spend on every score, every individual score for every school. When you choose to send your score to a school, they see everything you've taken up, everything you've chosen to select up to that point. So if you choose to, let's say you've taken it twice and you say, hey, I'm going to send both of those scores to them, they will see those two scores, they will see the Superscore, but that's just one score sent to one school. You only pay for that once. And again, free if you do it on test day.
It's also my understanding, this could change, but it's my understanding right now that for the schools that ask for multiple scores, they're not asking you to send official reports for all of those tests. You need to send one official report for whatever you consider your best score, but then they're just asking you to self-report the remaining scores.
Okay, this is fun. And we've got about 5 minutes left here, 4 minutes left because Stacey has to run. We do, thank you, Swetha. Great to see you, 2 straight live streams. We know that this is a thought that's running around people's heads. We could talk a blue streak about this. I don't think that this is, so GMAC is a nonprofit. So it is a nonprofit member association of business schools. So do they care about revenue? Of course, that's what keeps the doors open. Are they doing this purely to drive popularity and drive revenue? I actually don't think that's primary motivation for what it's worth. I think it is much more, so it has something to do with it in the sense that if the GMAT can be less scary, less intimidating, especially for folks who you get anxious on a section, we have bad days on a section, and it's so heartbreaking when you don't get your best composite. So what if you can go back in and have a little bit less stress because you really just need to nail one section that time and do your best on the rest and hope they go up? I think that's the primary motivation. And by the way, schools wanted this. Every change you ever see in the GMAT or the executive assessment or anything GMAC does, it's because schools wanted it. They are the schools. It's a member association. It's a nonprofit association of business schools.
If you literally look at their website, their board is made up of people who work at like deans of business schools and that sort of thing. So yes, this is coming from business schools.
So profit motive, again, we all need revenue to keep the doors open. Not the primary thing. And obviously lots more we can say about that topic. Okay. Yeah, I mean, conjecture here that is not unreasonable. Possible way to use Superscore, break ties between candidates with similar single attempt scores. Yeah, I mean, if you're an admissions office, this might be kind of a way you think about it. But the tiebreaker isn't usually 10 or 20 points on the GMAT or 30 points on the GMAT anyway. When you think about how MBA admissions works, other graduate business school admissions, they're asking for all this stuff about you, right? It's rare. We sometimes speak for the sake of simplicity in terms of candidate A, candidate B, higher score for candidate B, good. But candidate A and candidate B aren't clones of each other. That doesn't really exist.
If there's a true tiebreak situation where it's like, hey, we've got these 10 people, all of whom would be great to admit, but we've only got 5 more seats, the tiebreaker is a lot more likely to be something like, well, we already have X% of seats taken by people coming from finance and banking. So we don't need any more of those. But we don't have very many people coming from nonprofit. And one of the people in this pool is nonprofit. Yeah. So let's.
Oops.
Sorry. You just don't want me here, Charles.
No, I keep fumbling the buttons today. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. The tiebreak is typically not test scores or even GPA. It's when it comes down to that level, it's usually more about rounding out the class so that they've got lots of people coming in with different career perspectives to give a, just really good discussion and conversation in the courses that you're taking in B school.
And it's more like, to your point, Stacey, I think it's more likely to be, we met this person a couple times at events or the interview, and there was just something really compelling about. I think they'd be a great presence in the classroom. Like, that's more likely to be your tiebreaker. Certainly something that's unique about your background or your point of view. And it's much less likely to be, well, 10 more points on the GMAT for this one. Let's take that. It's not usually how the tiebreaking works. Again, not to say that GMAT scores aren't important. They of course they are. But one of the things admissions directors often say, hey, I spent about 20 seconds, maybe a minute on test scores. And then I spent a whole lot of time on everything else. So don't blow this out of proportion. Will this change the situation for some candidates? Sure. More than that, I don't know. I don't know that the composition of classes will be different substantially because of superscoring. All right, Stacey, I think you've got to go. Any other last comments before we wrap this up?
I'll say anytime a change is announced, everyone's stressed out because it's a change. So humans generally don't like change. In general, I do think that this is a good change overall. I think it's more likely to help more people than it is. I think it's going to either help or be neutral for most people, basically. There is as we talked about earlier, the potential equity issue, but frankly, as Charles said, it already existed. I don't think this necessarily significantly changes that issue that already existed, that some people can afford to take the test more than others. And this essentially puts out publicly things that were already happening kind of behind the scenes that we didn't necessarily fully understand or know about in terms of the admissions process. And more transparency is good. So in general, I'm happy for this change, even as we sit here and figure out how this is all going to work.
So good last comments. I think this is why we do these videos, right? We don't know what exactly they're going to say or when. But again, any change will happen very slowly, and I don't think the impacts are going to be huge right away. They really won't. So again, if you can only afford one attempt at the test, my heart goes out to you, because this is one of the fundamental inequities that has always bothered me deeply. It's still there, very much so. But they aren't, I think schools will be very attuned, especially in the first several years, maybe forever, to whether somebody is giving their super score. They only have one attempt. There is no super score, or somebody that has a super score off of 3, 6, 12 attempts. They're going to be tuned into that. Schools care about equity. It's very possible. It's possible that it actually helps a little bit, because now it's out on the table. Schools are going to ask about multiple attempts. It's going to be more open, that if you got your score off of one attempt, it's all you could afford. Tell the schools, communicate that, and don't stress about it. This should not change your test taking strategy one bit. Certainly not at this point. All right, let's wrap it up there. Sorry to keep you late, Stacey. Thank you everybody for watching. And if you have questions about this, hit us up in the comments. All right, thanks everybody.